What is up, guys? Welcome back to the show. I hope you guys, as always, have had a fantastic week. And as always, it seems within the past few months, we have had nothing short but a busy week in the professional wrestling world. But this week, we sadly have to start off with a bit of some heavy news. First, today, which I guess we should start. Today is Sunday, March 13th, 2022, just for proper records in case we're listening to this in the future. But like I said, with a little bit of heavy news here, we got some news from, it looks like the original source was Wade Keller at PW Torch, reported that Scott Hall is currently on life support and in critical condition after suffering 3 heart attacks this weekend. He recently had hip replacement surgery about a week ago, I believe, and he's only, it looks like 63 years old, so very, very sad to see. And of course, I think it goes without saying, we're all pulling for the bad guy here and definitely sending all the thoughts and well wishes and positive vibes and whatever you believe in, just sending all the positivity towards him. He was a big part in all of our childhoods and in the wrestling world, and a lot of things that you may not even realize he indirectly had a play in, or if he wasn't involved in, it may not have played out that way. So again, we just thoughts and prayers to him, and we hope he pulls through this. We know he'll pull through this, so just definitely wanted to address that and just, again, send all the positivity out his way. And speaking of that and sending positive vibes out, Big E, I'm sure you guys have heard the news regarding him as well. Sadly, on Friday, he took a scary bump. I guess you would say it doesn't even feel right calling it a bump, but Ridge Holland was going to give him a belly-to-belly suplex, and Big E just wasn't rotated. First of all, it's not my place to say who didn't do what, but you could tell the second Ridge was throwing him over, there was no rotation there at all. So Big E just landed straight on his head. It was so gross and gruesome to kind of witness and see. So if you're kind of squeamish and stuff like that, kind of you can't watch, I wouldn't really watch. It wasn't anything too like, I don't want to downplay it either, but just be careful watching it. I'm not gonna, like, I guess for instance, like it's not like a leg snap that we've seen in like basketball plays or football plays and stuff like that, but the sight of a man, especially a man Big E's size, landing straight on his head is pretty unsettling and pretty gruesome in its own right to watch as well. So that's what I kind of mean in that respect. So again, obviously, the clip isn't that long, and that was pretty much the end of that match, and he was taken out on a stretcher. He did apparently give the crowd there a thumbs up, but he also has released 2 videos since Friday. Of course, him in the hospital and currently, obviously, in a neck brace still. He did confirm in his first video that his neck is broken, and his main purpose was to send out thanks and pretty much send best wishes to everyone out that was looking out and reaching out to him. So just kind of shows what kind of guy he is, and he wanted to make sure and kind of give everyone a peace of mind and an ease of mind type thing going into the night, since obviously it was a big deal. So shout out to him and just the compassion and it just shows what kind of guy he is, you know what I mean? Just a true genuine individual. So very cool of him to view and deem it important to release something quick like that on video, and stuff like that really just, like I said, shows what kind of guy he is. So again, shout out to him. But like I said, in his first video, he was mentioning that he did have use of his digits and everything like that, which he meant like his fingers, arms, legs, things like that. So thank God, that's a plus right there. And just confirmed that he, like I said, does of course have a broken neck. And then the second video that he posted was following up saying that I believe it was a couple of vertebrae that he ended up fracturing. I think it was like C1 and C6, or 2 of those C's that are fractured, but nothing is requiring surgery or anything like that. So again, that's a big plus there and a big sigh of relief. But again, no one is rushing him to come back. I think everyone right now is just very, very thankful that it didn't end up so much worse and didn't end up how we all feared it could have. So big shout out to Biggie, no pun intended there. And just, again, well wishes to him. And I don't want to say a speedy recovery, just a good, healthy, and just safe recovery. You know, like, this is nothing to take light. You know, this could have been obviously a lot worse. And yeah, like, and again, I'm not going to sit here and pretend to know everything about neck injuries and things like that, but we've seen it change wrestlers' careers completely. And then we've seen other wrestlers like Ricky Starks who just needed to take X amount of time off and kind of take it easy on their way back and kind of, you know, just maybe change a few things and not wrestle as frequently starting off. I just dropped my Lysol bottle there, if you guys heard that. But yeah, so it all depends, right? And I think right now we just need to be thankful that obviously that Biggie is okay for the most part and he is able to move pretty much his body and nothing major is jeopardized like that. So again, just shout out to him, and of course we'll get more news and updates as the time goes on. But I think anyone counting on seeing him for WrestleMania this year is sadly mistaken. There was some, which I was surprised about, some sites out there, or just some, I guess, reporters, if you want to call them that, saying that there's a possibility or this may jeopardize Big E's future at WrestleMania. Like, to me, like, you know, like, I hate to be Debbie Downer here, but no, homeboy isn't going to be there at WrestleMania. Like, dude just broke his neck. Like, no, like, no. If anything, maybe he's, like, standing backstage, you know, in a neck brace, but even then, like, I don't know. And again, like, he could, to me, a broken neck is nothing to play with, right? Nothing to rush, and nothing major, nothing that he could do at WrestleMania, in my opinion, right now, unless I'm unaware of something huge, would warrant and be worth the risk of him going through unnecessary travel just to show up for a segment or two and then fly back to wherever, you know? So, again, just my opinion, but I think, to me, it's pretty safe to say, as sad as it is, you know? Like, I'm not sitting here happy about it, but with that being said, I think it's pretty certain that Big E is not going to be at WrestleMania, and it sucks for Kofi too. You know, like, it again, like, you don't want to downplay or I don't know, you don't want to overlook a serious situation like that. But it kind of sucks for Big E too, and that's what kind of happens when you're in a tag team or like a trios or a group or anything like that. Once one guy goes down, you know, it makes it difficult, and it kind of changes the whole trajectory for the team itself. And again, no blame anyone. It's just shit happens, you know, and that's what happens in situations like this. And as they say, the shit's not ballet, you know, and it just kind of makes you appreciate too all the crazy things that we see these guys and girls do on the daily and weekly, that things like this don't happen more frequently, you know, knock on wood. So again, and something as simple as a suplex, you know, like, that we see dozens of times throughout one show, you know, it's just something as simple as that can go wrong. So again, just shout out Big E and thoughts and prayers as well to, and whatever you guys believe in, just take a moment to send all the positivity and everything you can to Big E and along to Scott Hall, because they both, of course, deserve it in their own rights. So yeah, so just kind of wanted to touch on that, but we'll definitely move along here because we, as always, like I said lately, have a stacked card. We never seem to have a dull week, especially leading up to WrestleMania week, and then with everything that has happened with AEW this past week and a half. So we'll definitely get into that as well. But sticking with WWE here and kind of touching on a few key points with them before we get into AEW. Seems like AEW, as of late especially, has had a little bit more substance to kind of dig into. But I'm sure that'll change, like I said, since WrestleMania is a little over 3 weeks away at this point, which is crazy to say. Like, time and, like, the whole concept of time is just so crazy to me. Like, if you sit there and think about it, like, to me, it feels like it was just, in a lot of ways, just the beginning of the year, and then February didn't even feel like a thing, and now it's March, and then 3 weeks away is WrestleMania. Next thing you know, it'll be June, which is the start of summer. So it's just insane to think about. But WrestleMania this year, of course, is 2 nights, which breaks it out to April 2nd and April 3rd in Texas. I myself will not be attending. I would love to hear from you guys if you are. I know one of my friends in the UK, Ollie, shout out to Ollie, is actually going to be attending this year. So very cool that the gates have opened, and the travel restrictions have eased. So a lot of people are able to travel now, and things like that are a little bit easier. So if any of you guys are planning on hitting up WrestleMania, definitely reach out and let me know. Of course, on Twitter at ASHMANNS, and the show's Twitter page is at KickAshPodcast_. So definitely feel free to shoot me a message and let me know if you guys are going to be there. I'd love to see some pics or whatever. It's just cool having that in-person perspective, and especially with the festivities that WrestleMania is, and everything that surrounds it with that weekend. But I bring that up because a huge talking point this year has obviously been Cody Rhodes with his departure from AEW, a month and a half ago now? When did he officially leave? Time, guys, time. It's kind of weird when you think about it. Like, everything just has a weird way of kind of playing and rolling into each other. But at least in my brain, maybe it's more so on me. But anyway, with Cody Rhodes, he was the big talking point, right? He left AEW, and the hot topic was he was going straight to WWE. It was pretty much a for sure thing. It was just a matter of when he was going to debut, if it was going to be before WrestleMania. And again, that was almost a certain thing too, right? That he was going to debut within the next few weeks of him leaving AEW to set up a whole angle going into WrestleMania, being one of the big selling matches and one of the main events, because WrestleMania apparently has more than one main event, right, on each night. So he was going to be one of the main event matches and all that shit. So yeah, like that was the big hot and heavy for a few weeks, and then it kind of fizzled out, and then Stone Cold heated back up, and then Vince McMahon on Pat McAfee show heated back up, and then AEW kind of took the focal point, buying ROH, and and then we have 100 debuts with AEW within the past couple weeks, so it's just a lot has happened, right? So Cody has kind of taken a back seat in some ways again, but I think as we get closer to WrestleMania, it's kind of obviously like a now or never type thing, because no matter what the story is going to be, you have to give it its due diligence and its proper respect, to at least have somewhat of a story going into it. But I think, and again, this is not me breaking any type of major news here or coming up with anything super clever, but with even if your opponent is Seth Rollins, right, and you kind of have a built-in-ish type story there, you kind of can just, even if the focus going into, let's just go with Seth Rollins, right? I think that's the obvious choice at this point. We're definitely not getting a Triple H match with Cody anytime soon, with Triple H's respective health issues. And shout out to him, we just completely don't hear anything about him anymore either, so I hope he's doing well with everything that he went through a few months back. But yeah, so with Cody and Seth, you can even get away and do the excuse and of just throwing them, even if you just have the build and the hype going into the match, with it being a week and a half, if you announce it 2 weeks out, and then you just have that last go home week into WrestleMania to either have a stare down, a quick promo, or whatever. Again, not that I would recommend that at all. I would have done it a completely different way if that's what you're going to do, but just hypothetically speaking, in this scenario, if you could get away with that, right? Because if their whole idea and their whole mindset is just getting Cody and Seth on the card and having that pretty much sell itself, and then whoever wins, which I'm assuming you would have to go with Cody, right? I don't see you doing and rushing all this to have him lose. That would be insane. So we'll go with Cody Rhodes winning here, and then if you want to have the next month, 2 months, even if you want to somehow drag it out to SummerSlam. Because for whatever reason, I feel like Seth Rollins' character always has a way of dragging out his storylines and feuds, so it wouldn't even surprise me if they were to actually tell the story of their match after the match happens in kind of this weird mind fuckery way, which in a weird way would kind of be cool, you know? And I think these guys obviously could get away with it depending on how much freedom they have. And again, I think with Cody, I don't see him coming in here with him being as restricted and as cuffed as some of the other guys and girls for that matter. But yeah, that itself is going to be a topic we'll kind of dig into and dissect once he actually debuts, if he even does at this point. But I say that because if he's going to debut and if you're going to have him before and at WrestleMania, he's got to do it this Monday, tomorrow, right? March 14th. They're in Jacksonville. What bigger fuck you, you know, as much as it would pain me to say that, to AEW and Tony Khan and everything AEW for that matter, than to have Cody Rhodes debut on Raw in your hometown, essentially. That's your birthplace, right? Like, the devious part of me, it would just love to see that, and I don't know what that means about me, so say and dissect that as you want. But yeah, like I feel like if you're really pressed to have him at WrestleMania, there's no other better place at this point to have him make his debut than at Jacksonville on Raw. I was looking up because I was actually obviously making the lineup here for the show today. Before I sat down and started recording, I was looking at the preview for Raw tomorrow night, and surprisingly, they did have a preview, so kudos to them. But they did not mention Seth at all. They completely omitted him. They referenced KO, Kevin Owens, responding to Stone Cold accepting his challenge, I guess, or his invitation to show up on the KO show at WrestleMania, which, again, is a whole other thing we'll get into in a little bit, but nothing with Seth. And I find that very interesting because part of me was thinking, like, okay, like if it's a locked deal and a done deal and all this is going to play out that way, then they'll have Seth and they'll have something to do with Seth, right? Like having, even if it's just a matter of them mentioning that Seth is going to address his WrestleMania status, or Seth Rollins has an announcement to make, or Seth Rollins, whatever, you know, like Seth Rollins, blah, 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 you know, like Seth Rollins has a grievance, you know, like whatever, like part of me kind of expected them to have something like that, or even say like Seth Rollins would be starting off the show to air his grievances for being left off of the card or whatever. You know what I mean? So with them not advertising anything like that, and again, this is WWE, so they could very well send out a tweet tomorrow at 4:20 p.m. and saying that Seth Rollins is going to open up Monday Night Raw and to tune in to see what that means for his WrestleMania status, you know, and some shit like that. So that would not surprise me, but as of right now, as of recording this on Sunday, they did not mention him on Raw, so I don't know. I think that's very interesting. And if Cody is not coming in and Cody is not going to be involved in WrestleMania, which to me, I think original pick was to wait and have him debut on the Raw after Mania. I think I think in my mind, that's like the start of a new season for WWE. And I think that the Raw after Mania has always been a big deal. And I think that would be kind of a perfect way to kind of kickstart that Raw after Mania feel and vibe, and the notion that anything can happen at that Raw in particular, because it was always a big deal, right? Especially within the past 8-10 years. It just kind of took like a life of its own because you still had your hardcore fans hanging over from WrestleMania the night prior, and now this year the 2 nights prior. So I think if you are not pressed on having Cody Rhodes debut at Mania, the perfect world, if you're not going to do it this way and have him debut in Jacksonville, would be to wait and have him debut on the Raw after Mania. I think that would be such a cool and kick-ass way to start in my mind, like I said, the new season and in the show. I think he would be a good way to kind of start the night itself, right? Like, have the show start, have the fireworks go off, have maybe 5-10 seconds of not really quiet air, but the camera kind of panning around the arena, and then his music just drop, and then you just go from there, you know? So, again, just kind of getting a little ahead of myself there, but it's very interesting to me, the timing of where they're going to be on this coming Monday, the 3-ish weeks that we have left to WrestleMania, and the Cody Rhodes still kind of being a big question mark out there, and that, for that matter, Seth Rollins too, because it's not right if Cody isn't going to be coming in, that Seth still has jack shit to do for Mania, you know? Like, Seth has been one of the workhorses and the kind of the glue for WWE in a lot of ways, especially during the pandemic era, if you want to call it that. So I think he definitely deserves his place on the card. And if not, if he's not going to be on the card, I hope he at least gets his payday, and I hope he stays home and watches the kid, or he does whatever. He's at the after party, he's just chilling backstage, and I hope he's taken care of. I'll just say that. But definitely wanted to kind of touch on Cody, WWE, Jacksonville, and everything like that, and especially in regards to Seth. But like I mentioned a little bit ago, we did get a response from Stone Cold Steve Austin not even 24 hours after the, I guess, challenge or invitation was initiated by Kevin Owens on Raw. First of all, I'll say I thought it was a stellar promo from Owens, and a pretty cool way to end the show. I think Kevin is... I don't think, and like I said, I'm kind of going to pause for a quick second, but I think it's pretty clear and pretty obvious now we're not getting a match with Stone Cold, so thank you. You know, I'm very happy that Austin didn't cave there, and we're not getting a full-flown match, because we don't need it. I'll speak for myself. I don't need to see Austin in a full-blown match, especially with something that has no real story going into it, right? Like, just... Kevin Owens doesn't like Texas, like, okay, like, yeah, you know, if I were that dedicated and loyal to my home state, you know, and someone was shitting on it repeatedly, then I guess I'd be a little annoyed, but not enough to make me go back on my word that I've held for 19 years now and risk my health. Like, you would have to do something to my family. It would have to be something more severe, right, than just saying, oh, I hate Texas and Texas is crap, and, you know, just whatever he's been saying, you know, like, again, it's fine, you know, but like, it's nothing to warrant an actual match. And the reports and everything that were being released, and all the rumors that Austin was coming back to have a match, like, that's why sometimes I really despise a lot of these websites and these Twitter pages and stuff like that, because it's just, they do it just for clicks, and it's shit that should be obvious. It just gets blown out of proportion, and then it's gonna leave people to be upset because people are gonna be expecting one thing and they're not gonna get it when they shouldn't have really expected it to begin with. So I don't know, like, to me, I'm just excited that Austin's going to be there, and I think it's a no-brainer that he was going to be involved in some way, because with it being in Texas, obviously, he had done the little hype video for Mania months ago, before the build for WrestleMania even officially began, so there's no real surprise there that he was going to be involved at WrestleMania this year, but... to me, like, I'm fine with what he's probably going to do. It's probably going to be what we all expected. KO is going to have his setup. Austin's going to come down. They're going to... or Kevin Owens, rather, is going to say some shit about Texas. And I could even see, you know, HBK coming down, JBL, Booker T, and everyone else that he named coming down, since they're obviously all from Texas as well, and then Austin being there too. It's just a feel-good moment, but it's a way to kind of hear that music again and get everyone out there, and just a way to kind of break up the flow of the card as well, you know? Like, if you just had a heavy match, like, this would be a good... I hate to say come down, because Austin's definitely not a come down moment, right? But just a deviation in the match after match after match, like, mindset and flow. Like, just kind of break it up a bit and just give the audience a way to mentally check out for a second and just not have to intently focus on something and just enjoy something, as opposed to really paying attention. So I think, obviously, in my opinion, like I said, and it was, you know, like I've been saying here for the past couple shows, I'm excited to see Austin, but I don't need to see him in a match. So I'm happy that he accepted. I'm kind of surprised he did so quickly. Like, I figured with WWE especially, they would drag this out, but I don't see, in my opinion, Austin making a return to Raw or anything, because what would he really do? He's being hyped and promoted to make an appearance on the KO show, which is a talk show on WrestleMania. So you can't have him come on Raw to hype up his talk show, right? Like, you can't have him come on Raw and talk to hype up his talking segment. So, I mean, I guess maybe you could, and it's Austin, and, like, again, like, I'd be super stoked to see him. But I don't know, like, I'm just not, I guess I'll just say I'm not holding my breath and holding out that we'll see him before WrestleMania itself. And we probably shouldn't, and that's kind of what I'm getting to here as well. Like, you don't need him on Raw. In, I don't know, like, especially since it is just a KO show segment and not a match, right? If it was going to be a match and things were completely different, then yeah, I would say get him on Raw to build the match even more. But if it's just a KO segment, which, again, I'm super happy it is, but since it is just that, then, again, just have him debut or make his return, rather, on WrestleMania, have him come out and do stunners on whoever's out there. And like I said earlier, if Seth doesn't end up doing anything with Cody and doesn't have anything else that's solid on the WrestleMania card, you can easily throw him in there on the KO show in that segment with Kevin. It's not ideal, right? But it's a big moment, and it's going to be a big video clip too. It's going to be shown on YouTube. It's going to get probably millions of views. It's going to be on ESPN with Stone Cold making his return, after 19 years, as they're hyping it. So it's going to be a big deal regardless. It's just maybe not what Seth was probably planning on going into Mania, but how can you complain about having a moment with Stone Cold on WrestleMania, itself? So either way, I think it's going to work out for them. It's just such a crazy ride this year, right? And I can only imagine, like, just sitting here thinking about the info that we know and the lack of info that we know, depending on how you want to look at it. Imagine being on their side and being completely involved in, like, the nitty gritty of it, and, like, just being, like, all, like, just so engulfed in it, and then having shit change, like, either daily or by the hour. Like, whew, like, I couldn't imagine. I could not imagine. So in a lot of ways, I don't envy what they go through. So shout out to them and their brains and their mental capacity and their mental health for dealing with what I'm sure is a crazy time frame. But definitely had to touch on some WWE stuff and WrestleMania stuff. Since I said we are a little over 3 weeks away now, which is, it's crazy to think about. But moving on to AEW itself, we again had a stacked week with the fallout from the pay-per-view on Sunday, of course, being Revolution. Again, like I said earlier, we had a good amount of debuts, but it feels like we've had just a ton of debuts within the past few weeks itself. So when you really go back and think of everyone, if we were to sit down, and had I thought about this prior to recording, I would have, like, starting from today, March 13th, and going back to January 1st, how many debuts and signings we've gotten in AEW. I'm sure it's kind of crazy to think about. And again, that's not even a bad thing. I'm not saying that as like, like shitting on them type thing. It's just, it's amazing to think of how deep and stacked their roster is getting. And yeah, in some ways it can be considered a little bloated, but I'm still kind of giving them the benefit of the doubt to see how the next 6-ish months play out. To me, I think it's going to be a big, I think the next 6 months to me are going to be a big deal for the company. I think that it's going to be a big sign as to what direction Tony Khan wants to really take the company, especially with the acquisition of Ring of Honor now as well, and him stating that he's going to be the booker of Ring of Honor, and whatever that means, because we don't know for sure if they're going to have a weekly television show like they had on their random time slot, or if it's going to be another YouTube series, right? And if it's just going to be a strictly Ring of Honor show. And if it is, then it's not going to be more AEW talent that are, AEW talent proper, like, and signed to them specifically, going to be kind of migrated and shifted over to Ring of Honor's roster and kind of go on their whatever developmental show, if you want to call it that. I know there's some reports out there that that's kind of the direction that Tony Khan wants to take it, and kind of have it like an NXT type of vibe, and like the original NXT rather, and actually have it as what the original purpose of NXT was supposed to be, a true developmental system. So And again, that could be a whole other show in and of itself, but I think it's so we have a full understanding of what this acquisition truly means with in regards to Ring of Honor, Tony Khan, AEW, and everything like that. I'm not gonna really speculate too much on it, but I will say I hope that, and I kind of trust Tony Khan at this point. I think we owe it to him, but I hope he doesn't burn himself out, right? And again, like, I'm not going to sit here and act like I know his daily schedule, but I'm sure dude is hella stacked and just, like, I don't know when he probably sleeps. Like, he's another Vince, right? Like, it's insane to think that you and them share the same day and the same amount of hours in the same world, because, like, it's just completely different, right? So I just hope that he's good, and I hope that he is still able to take moments for himself and days for himself and, like, a small vacation, and a mental, like, checkout day. So just kind of just like a more, I guess, compassionate look out for him, and a more just like a, hey, you good type thing for him, and nothing else. But the main, I guess, focal point and the idea with that is we really don't know what that's going to mean for AEW going forward in the next 6 months too. And with all the talents that he's been signing, I think that you can easily put them on whatever you're going to be doing with Ring of Honor. If they're going to be continuing their programming, you obviously then would have those resources there, and they still are having their independent shows that they, like, for instance, their show that they're doing on WrestleMania weekend. Little things like that, I think you can kind of branch out and use more talent and use them in those shows and in that regard as well. So if that's the idea, then I think that's brilliant, and that's a good idea too, because you're kind of killing two birds with one stone in a lot of ways. Like, you're developing talent and building them up, so once they get a little bit bigger of a name for themselves, you already have your Dynamites and your Rampage time slots and your shows right there, so you can kind of thrust them into the mainstream at that point, right? And then just kind of go from there. So depending on what the idea and the mindset is behind that, you obviously have the resources, like I'm saying there. But I think that the next 6 months are going to be really interesting to see what talent and what new signings get the shine and the focus, right? Is it going to be a Keith Lee direction? Is it going to be a Swerve direction? Like, who is it going to be? A singles Jeff Hardy, which I doubt. I'm pretty certain they're going to stick to the tag division, but that can very much happen in a year from now, depending on how long the Hardy Boys reunion tour is going to be. So just so many different things going in AEW. You can obviously do a whole hour just on them and just what's happened in the past week itself, right? So, and then, of course, you have William Regal as well. What role is he going to play? Is he just going to be a manager for Bryan Danielson and Jon Moxley, or is he going to be an authority role in Ring of Honor? It's just, you have so many different possibilities. But speaking of William Regal, we're going to kind of shift over to the AEW shows themselves here. We're not going to get too deep into it, but we definitely obviously have to reference what has happened this week, because it was definitely a big week on Dynamite itself. The show itself started off, we had Jericho coming out and looking pretty somber and pretty upset and pretty ashamed of himself, and stating that he pretty much was that. He stated that he went against his word, and with him not shaking Eddie Kingston's hand at the pay-per-view, pretty much was him going back on his word, and he's a man of his word, and that's a big deal to him. So he wanted Eddie Kingston to come out so he can pretty much right his wrongs and do the right thing and let bygones be bygones and, kumbaya type shit. So Eddie Kingston comes out. Eddie Kingston gets a very big and solid reaction, as he should. And again, like I've said numerous times on this show and pretty much wherever you've heard me in the podcast world at this point, I'm a huge Eddie Kingston fan, and this guy, there's just something about him. There's just a presence that he has about him that just screams star, man, and he just makes it look so easy. But Eddie ended up telling us a story about, I think it was about 3 or 4 individuals that he met on FanFest during the Revolution weekend, which was the meet and greets, I'm assuming that he was referring to. And 4 individuals, I believe it was 4, stated that, they made life-changing decisions, I'll say, because of things that Eddie Kingston has been through and that he's kind of opened up about, and especially in his Players Tribune, and that the things and the struggles that he referenced in the Tribune, that it connected with them and it helped them and gave them the strength. So Eddie Kingston said that that's what got him through, Friday night, for instance. He said he just wanted to go to the bar and drink and not really go to the pay-per-view on Sunday, but meeting those people, it helped him, and it gave him the will to get through the match on Sunday and the pay-per-view, which was it's just another thing, like Eddie Kingston is just, everything about him is just so relatable and just gut-wrenching in the right way, and maybe that's a little too heavy of a phrase, but he just has a way of really connecting with you and just kind of saying like the heaviest shit with it feeling heavy, but not ruining the moment or just kind of like taking you completely out of the moment, if that makes any type of sense at all. But I don't know, it's just one of those things where he's one of those guys where you feel like you can have like a heart-to-heart conversation with him, but then like once that's over with, like you can go on about your day and it's not going to be awkward or anything like that. Like he just has a presence about him. But going through this and listening to him and watching Jericho's reaction and pandering to Eddie, to me, like, it was just classic Jericho. Like, we're just waiting on him to turn on Kingston at that point. And that's surely enough what happened. They did end up shaking hands, but that was just a setup for 2.0 and Daniel Garcia to come out and make the attack. We did get Santana and Ortiz coming to try to make the save, but Jericho ended up attacking his former Inner Circle teammates and pretty much turning and ending and just pretty much like nailing the final nail in the coffin for Inner Circle. What I did think was funny was Jake Hager making his I guess triumphant, attempt to save the day to the ring, which every wrestler does, right? Like their grand run down to the ring. He comes down and he acts perplexed, like whose side is he on? And it's like, if you know anything about Jake Hager in AEW, you know that he's Team Jericho for life. So it was just funny to me, like, there was never a question to me what side Hager was going to be on. It's always Jericho, so it was just kind of funny to me. Maybe, whatever, but it is what it is. So no surprise there to me. Jake Hager is Team Jericho as well. And the apparent name for the faction is the Jericho Appreciation Society, which I think is not very good at all. I think it's kind of shit, to be honest with you. I hope that was just like a temporary thing and it's going to have like a different name, because I don't see that lasting at all. Like, I don't know, like, Jericho has had a lot of hits, but to me this isn't one of them. No, it's not something that you can take serious, and it's not something to me that screams long lasting, and maybe that's the idea. Maybe this is just like a brief temporary transitional group or transitional faction, first of its kind. Because the whole idea with Daniel Garcia, for instance, was for him to be aligning with Bryan Danielson and Jon Moxley. So maybe this is just a temporary form of the Jericho Appreciation Society. So Daniel Garcia can kind of be the thing in the prize that's up for possession between the JAS, which it would be at that point, against whatever Mox and Danielson and Regal are going to call themselves. And then whoever wins, like, I'm not going to say it's actually going to be like Garcia on a pole type shit, but, like something to that effect. So, again, I think maybe that could be the route that this is going in, and this isn't going to be a long-term group. But if it is, please change the name, because that's just not it, And I think they already made a shirt, so I fear the worst there, but I can't get down with it. But I'm gonna give it a little bit of time and hold off on shitting on it too much. But I think, if nothing else here, it's obvious that the Inner Circle is done. But for that being said, the next match that we had, which I was completely taken aback by when I heard Justin Roberts say that it was for the AEW World Championship. Obviously, your champion is Hangman Page defending against Dante Martin. And I was surprised just because this literally came out of nowhere. And, of course, that then made me go check Twitter and realize that it had been announced on Twitter like maybe 2 hours prior to Dynamite making its air, or I was going to say debuting, but that's obviously not right, but airing live on TV. So, it is what it is. It was just, the match itself was fine, but to me, I was just kind of like, I was still, and this is probably just me, but I was just so hung up on, why are we getting a random World Championship match that wasn't hyped? And I don't know. And again, Dante Martin is the number 2 guy in the rankings, right? Like, why would you go to the number 2 guy? Like, I need clarification on these rankings when whatever rank person gets their match at what point. Like, I need rules. I need a list. Please help me understand so I can sit here on this podcast and put this shit over for you guys. You know what I mean? Like, I would love to be a huge fan of the ranking system, right? And not shit on it every time it's brought up, but AEW, again, does a lot of things good, just like Jericho. They do, the majority of the shit that they do is great, and we praise them for, but I'm not gonna not acknowledge something when it doesn't make sense, you know? And I think it's something that is kind of simple in a way that if you're gonna have it, just have it make sense, you know? Like, or don't have it, or change it, or just tweak it, you know? But I need some help, guys. But moving on, we had Moxley and Danielson versus JD Drake and Anthony Henry, which is the Workhorsemen. Pretty cut and dry. It's pretty much like almost like a squash match, you know, essentially for Danielson and Mox to kind of put themselves over, not in a bad way, but it was what it was, you know, to get over the dominant force that they are and that they're going to be. And it set up the promo thereafter with Tony Schiavone in the ring, letting William Regal have what apparently was way too long of a moment on the mic. Again, I'm not even going to sit here and dig too much into it, but a William Regal promo is something that you need to go and watch for yourself. But apparently his promo went a little bit too long, so then, of course, once you go over your time, it then affects everyone else thereafter, which William Regal apparently was a good sport about and owned up to and apologized. I didn't necessarily see the apology myself, but I don't really need to, you know. It's none of my business, didn't affect me. I was the beneficiary of it, right? Like, it was a good segment to me and a good moment, and I didn't know he went over his time. So, again, it served its purpose in Regal just being man enough and owning up to and being professional enough to admit when something was wrong, since we as fans and on social media have to be privy to everything nowadays, you know? So we had to have found that out. But to me, I just thought this segment was amazing, and I look forward very much to what the three of these guys do going forward. But next we had Pac versus Wheeler Yuta, since the championship match did not go the full 60 minutes, which I think was a cool touch. So as I shit on the random championship match that we got, I will give them kudos for little things like this. But again, it was just pretty quick and straight to the forward with Pac getting the W here, as he should. Moving along here, which I think was probably this, depending on who you're a bigger fan of, maybe the second moment of the night or the moment of the night. For me, it was the moment of the night, with all due respect to William Regal. Or maybe 1B, 1A, 1B. But that was the emergency board meeting of the HFO. Long story short, it was the setup for the debut of the Shocker, Jeff Hardy, coming into AEW. It was pretty well done. I'll give them credit for it. You know, they were having their vote in the ring. It was a vote on if Matt should stay in the AHFO. Private Party ended up doing the thumbs down to him, which was kicking him out of the group. Sting and Darby Allin attempted to come down and make the big save, but it was just too much. So we got the debuting Jeff Hardy, who, as of course he would, and I say this with all love, as the only other person who would have done this are Rhea Ripley, and if you know, you know, type thing. You stop and hit your pose before you make the big save, as you should. You know, damn it, as you should. If you're a star, you take ownership of your star status. So if you're gonna come down there and you're gonna make the save, damn it, you get your shit in. So Jeff Hardy did his little dance on the aisle, which I legit laughed out loud, because of course he would, right? Like, he did his little quick hip thrust and like his little Hardy sign to the fans and came in, made the save. Looked great. It was a good moment. It was very cool seeing how emotional Matt was and just how happy the both of them were. And I love the kind of little mini stare-off that we got between Jeff Hardy, I should clarify now, between Jeff Hardy and Darby Allin. Like I said earlier, I don't think we're going to be getting too many Jeff Hardy single matches anytime soon. I think the immediate focus is probably going to have as the Hardy Boys tag team reunion, you know, which obviously makes sense. So I can see that playing out for maybe a year, and then I can see them breaking out and doing their own thing. And I would say a year minimum as a team, right? And that's depending on if you want them to actually have a title reign and how long you want that reign to be and just things like that. But I think the tag division not necessarily needs them, but I think just all the matches that you can get out of them, obviously the Young Bucks and the Hardys, the Young Bucks and the Hardy Boys and FTR, and just everything, just all the combinations you can think of, that you wouldn't get as much out of the Hardy Boys together as a team. And I'm not going to make any assumptions, but I would probably think just with how gingerly Matt walks to the ring sometimes, and with his hip and things like that he's mentioned with his, like, for instance, like all the times he's done the leg drops and things like that. So as odd as it is when you think in comparison, but I think Jeff may have a little bit of a longer shelf life as a singles competitor than Matt maybe. So that's why I was saying you get as much out of the team together as you can and then go from there. But I'm me personally very, very excited to have Jeff here in AEW. I think it's an obvious perfect fit, and I think WWE is probably kicking themselves for making the presumptuous assumption, like the presumptuous accusation against Jeff that he was intoxicated, and just, I don't know, like, obviously they probably could have handled it differently, and they probably should have handled it differently, but it is what it is, and we're benefiting by having the Hardy Boys back together, and Jeff looked great again, and I can't wait to see what the new merch is going to look like. I'm sure it's going to be super creative and shit that you'll actually want to wear, so I'm definitely looking forward to that as well. A little after that, we got the, I'm going to say, debut in-ring promo for Wardlow, and I classify it like that because in my recollection, and correct me if I'm wrong, this is the first time we've had an in-ring promo by Wardlow by himself in an actual full-blown promo, and I loved it. A lot of people gave it praise, but I was surprised with some of the criticism that it got too, and a lot of people saying that it was just the generic babyface promo, but I think it was, but I think he made it work, and I think he made it believable, and I think, like, not once did I question anything he was saying, or did I think, oh, like, boo-hoo, like, yeah, me too, like, we all go through shit, like, it made sense, like, if anything, I would have thought, like, okay, like, yeah, like, you knew MJF was a piece of shit this long, and you let him do X, Y, and Z, like, maybe a few things were a little bit, like, if you want to get technical, like, the shit with Damon Linko and stuff like that, like, how, like, if you want to nitpick it, I could see stuff like that. But I think everything made sense. He signed a contract. He did what he had to do to support his family, his single mom, his sisters, everything like that. Like, we all have our why, right? And he told us his. And I think as a babyface, that's what you want. You want an understanding as to why, and for instance, more specifically with Wardlow, if you're coming off of a heel and a bad guy run, and that's all we've known you as, you need to get a foundation as to why he was that bad guy. And he gave us that because he signed a contract. He did what he had to do. He knew MJF was a piece of shit the whole time, but he was doing what he had to do for his family. And it got to a certain point where he couldn't take it anymore, and here we are. He gave us his why, and he apologized. He owned up to what he did. He acknowledged it was wrong, and he shouldn't have done some shit, and he apologized, and I think that, along with him still having his appearance and his, like, badass persona and look and vibe, like, he just handled it very well. And I'm not gonna say it was the best promo ever, it was nothing like groundbreaking or anything like that, but I think for what I was specifically hoping for from Wardlow, like, with this kind of, like, make it or break it type moment, like, I was impressed. Like, I wasn't expecting to be as connected and to really learn as much about him as I did in one night and in one segment, and I'm hooked, I hope he wins the title. I don't think he's going to. I think MJF is not going to take this lightly. I think MJF, like we all know, is a piece of shit, and he's going to screw Wardlow, and I think Scorpio Sky should keep the title, so that's my official prediction, is that Sky is going to retain the title because of MJF doing some devious shit. And I think, as we deserve to see that story play out, and I think this is a perfect pairing for Wardlow to kind of branch out a little bit more, and the perfect, like, opponent and person to play off of, because he's probably most comfortable with MJF too, obviously, with their history and how long they've been intertwined together, so I think this is going to be fun. And I will say again, I love too that MJF and Punk were not here this past week. I think it was a good a good touch and just kind of sells the match a little bit more. You go through this brutal dog collar match. You don't want these guys there just a few days later showing up on TV. So whether they were backstage or not, I'm happy we didn't see them on TV. So kudos to whoever made that decision. Even if they, wanted to be there and they physically couldn't, I'm glad that they weren't. It just kind of was just another way to kind of accentuate the match, and I think another selling point for the match itself. I'm a big lover of selling, and I think that you should milk as much out of every little situation in wrestling that you should, because that's the whole point. Wrestling is psychology and wrestling is storytelling. So I love that. Even if it wasn't anything major, to me it kind of was. So again, just kudos to them and shout out to them and everyone involved. And again, Wardlow is a star. Wardlow to me is the future, and I'm very excited to see how this plays out for him, because once he loses and goes through his feud with MJF, I'm very excited to see what that means for him next, and if he goes right back to the TNT title at that point. And of course we'll see how the lay of the land is at that point, but very excited for his future. And again, he just, in my opinion, he killed his promo this week, so right on, Wardlow. Like I said earlier, I'm just kind of skipping through the card here. We did already briefly mention Scorpio Sky. I kind of buried the lead there, but like I said, I'm kind of just getting to the main points here this week to kind of not keep you guys too long. But the TNT title match this week ended up being against your reigning, defending Sammy Guevara versus the Scorpio Sky as your competitor. And I don't know why I called him the Scorpio Sky, like the Brian Kendrick, but I think I was debating because there's a lot that I want to say with this match, and I think looking back on it, the whole story of this was getting over Paige Van Zandt and American Top Team and all that, and that group and that faction, I guess, that we're going to have going forward. And I guess Tay Conti and Sammy Guevara are an item on TV now, so there's that. So much we can say on that in and of itself, but just going to leave that alone for now. But I'm happy Scorpio Sky won. I'm happy that the titles are off of Sammy. I think this is a way to set up, obviously, we got the official contract signing of Paige Van Zandt, which, is what it is. I'm not going to get too much into that right now. I did watch an interview that she did on ESPN, I think, like she was in a pool or something. It was like a quick 12-minute interview. She was very complimentary of the wrestling world and said that the first couple shows that she was there, she did for free, apparently, and she just got immediately hooked, and she was just there to kind of help out Lambert and just kind of be like backup, but she immediately got hooked and told her manager that it's something that she really enjoyed and she wanted to get involved in. So it just pretty much told her manager, and then that's how things played out. Like, that's a few weeks later she got a contract, apparently. So, and the guy even asked her, like, it was that easy? And she said, yeah, it was that easy. So apparently it was that easy. So it is what it is. And hey, that's cool. Like, if I guess if you're big in the boxing and the MMA world and everything like that, and you knew who Paige Van Zandt was, then maybe that is a bigger deal. But me personally, I didn't really know who she was, so that's kind of why I started to do a little bit of research and just do a little, I guess, look up of her, right, and to kind of get a little bit more knowledge on her story and everything like that. So still in the process of that, but the whole point and the whole, I guess, idea and story of the main event itself, like I was mentioning earlier, was the Paige Van Zandt angle and the whole Tay Conti interference and inclusion, I should say, rather, not interference. But with Cody and Brandy Rhodes not being in AEW anymore, it kind of freed up Paige and kind of took away her go-to opponent. So my early prediction for all this is Paige Van Zandt, obviously, versus Tay Conti, but I think we'll get a mixed tag match here at some point as well, with Sammy and Tay Conti teaming up against Paige Van Zandt, and I think Paige's husband's name is Austin Vanderford or something like that. Austin Vanderfold Ford, something like that. Pretty sure it's Vanderford. No disrespect, just again, not really familiar with these guys. But I think he could do that because he had obviously made his appearance, and he has been on AEW TV in the past Or you can do like Scorpio Sky. You can have Paige and Scorpio Sky team up against Sammy and Tay Conti and have a fun little match like that. And see where Paige is at and see where she's at experience-wise and depending on how quickly you want to get her in the ring. But a tag match is always a way to kind of hide and mask someone's, I don't want to say, I don't know, but just obviously since she's still new, right? You want to, like Paul Heyman would always say, is hide the weaknesses and accentuate the positives, right? So it's kind of something like that. And for instance, what they did with Ronda, right? Like you want to protect and hide your investment and hide their weaknesses. So if she's still new, but for whatever reason you feel like you have to get her out there on TV within the next month or so and in an actual match, then you can have her start off in a tag match like that. And I think that would be very easy because she can pretty much get carried until she, gets the proper experience and the proper level and skill level. So I think we're still a little far away from that, but I think obviously this past week on Dynamite, that was the starting point and the seeds being planted there in the next feud for both sides in respect. But the last thing that I want to touch on here, and I kind of left this towards the end, was the Thunder Rosa and Legit Leyla Hirsch match. No surprise that Thunder Rosa is advancing to face Dr. Britt Baker, DMD, next week in San Antonio, Texas, which is going to be their St. Patrick's Day themed show, which I think to the day, or like damn near to the day of their Lights Out match from last year, which was the, pretty monumental and game-changing match in the women's landscape of things. That, of course, was the match that saw Britt Baker with that infamous photo and led to the t-shirt, which I was a sucker and got one too, and just kind of led to the skyrocket of her career, and rightfully so, and Thunder Rosa as well in a lot of respects. But this is the culmination of this feud, and it's going to be inside of a steel cage match, and Tony Khan did clarify that the only way to win a steel cage match in AEW is by pinfall, submission, or knockout, so there is no escape of the cage or anything like that. So, and of course no DQs, so you have to win, straight up win one way or the other. So definitely going to be a good match. I think this should main event. I don't see them having a cage match and it not main eventing. Although I say that, and I don't remember if the one that they had with Cody and Wardlow, if that main evented the show. That was in Georgia. It would make sense that it did, but I can't remember offhand. So maybe it wouldn't, but in my mind it just kind of makes sense with all the hype and hoorah going into it. But that's the match I'm looking forward to, and as much as I hate to say it, I think this is going to be the moment of truth and the big moment for Thunder Rosa. I think she's going to get the W here, and I think Britt is going to finally come to an end with her title reign, right as she finally got the new beautiful title and the beautiful championship itself. She has to give it right over to Thunder Rosa. So that is my early prediction there. On Rampage, we did see the in-ring debut of Swerve Scott defeating Tony Nese, of course. Very interested to see what they do with Swerve going forward. And he's kind of like, it's one of those things, right? He's one of those guys where he just recently debuted in a short amount of time along with a lot of other guys. And it's just trying to navigate and sort through what you have now and where you're going to place where. So I think that's why I said earlier it's going to be very interesting to see how the next 6-8 months play out. I mean, even a damn near a year, like a full calendar year, and seeing where we are at Revolution this time next year. So very interesting to see how that plays out. But I, as always, appreciate you guys listening all the way through and again, just having this on your feed and giving your feedback every week and subscribing and all that good stuff. So thank you guys so much. Again, follow the show on Twitter at KickAshPodcast _. You can follow me personally on Twitter at ASHMANNS. But I will talk to you guys later this week. Take care.